Welcome to week 4, lecture 2, aerobic training methods 2. Objective of lecture 2 are to know interval training method of aerobic training. Here you will be familiarized with what is interval training and what are the different types of interval training. The second objective is to know different types of interval training method with example. Here you would be explored with how interval training can be related to your aerobic activity. Outcome of lecture 2 are to recall interval training methods and types of interval training, and to identify interval training aerobic methods and relate it to your weekly aerobic trainings. Now let's recall aerobic training methods as in general. In lecture 1, we covered continuous training methods with example. In lecture 2, let's explore interval training and its type with example. Now let's understand what exactly interval training means. Let's start by knowing what interval training means. Interval training is a cardio activity method which is performed in an interval pattern. Unlike continuous training, which is done in a continuous manner, interval training is done in a non-continuous manner. So this non-continuous means it has an interval for work, it has an interval for rest. So interval training is divided into something called as work interval and rest interval. Now work interval means where you are performing the given aerobic activity with the desired heart rate or intensity that serve as a stimulation or challenge to cardiorespiratory system. And rest interval doesn't mean that you are absolutely resting. It only means that you are performing the given aerobic activity in much more less intensity in compared to work interval, or you are performing it in a passive recovery where the heart rate is just like the warm-up heart rate. Let's start with the first type of interval training, the Fartlek interval training. How it is defined and characterized? It is defined by performing an interval but with a self-perceived work interval and rest interval. What it means is there is no fixed duration for work interval or rest interval, neither there is any fixed intensity at which you perform a work interval or rest interval. This intensity and volume of interval is absolutely decided based on the perception of the exerciser. Let's relate it with an example to understand more. Let's use the common mode of aerobic training that is done in the gym, the treadmill walk or treadmill run. Explore the prescription for what it means. You are training aerobic respiratory fitness, you are using machine, you are using the mode of training as interval training Fartlek, you are performing only one exercise with one set with a duration of 15 minutes. Now the interval is defined here. Work interval at 70 to 80% of HRR and rest interval at 60 to 70% of HRR. It means you perform treadmill walk, treadmill jog or treadmill run in between the intensity of 60 to 80% of HRR. In work interval, you increase the treadmill speed so that the heart rate is in between 70 to 80% of HRR. So obviously the speed of the treadmill is much more higher, and in this work interval you would be jogging or running. How long you would be doing? It absolutely depends upon your perception of how long you would be able to maintain the given speed and maintain the given heart rate, that is intensity. This is followed by a rest interval which is much more lesser intensity. It means you reduce the speed of the treadmill and you continue doing the treadmill jog or treadmill brisk walk as long as you find that you have recovered enough, and as you find that you have recovered enough from the work interval, you again start the next set of work interval with increasing the speed at 70 to 80% of HRR. You continue this pattern of interval training for 15 minutes. Let's explore this example in more detail. Let's assume the set 1, the work interval you are able to cover for 3 minutes. It means you sustain the given intensity of 70 to 80% of HRR for 3 minutes. At the end of the 3 minutes, you perceive that you are getting more tired. So you reduce the speed and you make sure that the speed is not below 60% of HRR. So after 1 minute, you perceive that now you have recovered and you are able to run again. So the total sets would be 4 minutes that you have covered. In second set, instead of 3 minutes, now the work interval you have covered is 5 minutes. So after 5 minutes or towards the end of the 5 minutes, again you felt that you are getting tired. Now you reduce the speed and then you maintain that low speed up to 2 minutes. So at the end of the 2 minutes, again you felt that you are recovered. Now you can run again. So you continue doing this until the prescribed duration of 50 minutes is completed. Now this method of interval training will make you do more volume of work at relatively less time. At the same time, it allows you to challenge your cardiorespiratory system for brief interval of time based on your perception of how long you can tolerate the high intensity. So in compared to continuous training, this method of interval training allows you to do more cardio workout. At the same time, it allows you to do higher intensity cardio workout based on how long you can able to tolerate the given intensity. So this type of workout is much more preferred to someone who has just started interval training and they are not sure how long they can sustain the high intensity workout. Let's go to the next type of interval training, high intensity interval training. High intensity interval training is a cardio activity performed with fixed work interval and fixed rest interval. Unlike Fartlek interval, where work interval and rest intervals will keep on changing by set, in case of HIIT, work interval and rest interval duration and intensity would be fixed throughout the workout. That is the major difference between a Fartlek and an HIIT interval training to start with. Now let's explore what is short HIIT. The term short relates to the duration of the work interval, and that work interval is defined with a duration between 10 seconds to 60 seconds. So interval training where the work duration is for 10 seconds minimum and maximum 60 seconds. Similarly, the rest interval is 10 seconds minimum and maximum 60 seconds is defined as short HIIT. Let's understand short HIIT with an example. Let's describe the exercise prescription first. The biomotor variable that you want to improve is the aerobic capacity. The mode of training is machine. The method of aerobic training is short HIIT. You are performing one exercise, that is treadmill, walk, jog or run. The duration of this workout is 10 minutes. Because it is a short HIIT, because it is an HIIT, you have to define work interval and rest interval. In this case, in this prescription, work interval is 15 seconds and rest interval is 45 seconds. Then you define the intensity at which you are going to perform 15 seconds of work interval and 45 seconds of rest interval. In a given example, the intensity of work interval is 80 to 90% of HRR. And intensity of rest interval is 60 to 70% of HRR. Now one set is equal to 1 minute. How does this come? How did this 1 minute come from? It comes by 15 seconds of work interval and 45 seconds of rest interval. So combining together, this is something you do back to back. So it comes with 1 minute. The duration of the workout is 10 minutes. So if one set covers 1 minute, so you have to perform 10 sets to complete 10 minutes. So you increase the speed of the treadmill for 15 seconds and sustain the intensity so that you cover it for 15 seconds. Followed by that, you reduce the speed of the treadmill so that the heart rate is in between 60 to 70% of HRR, and you maintain that for 45 seconds. As you finish the 45 seconds, again you increase the treadmill speed to match the heart rate of 80 to 90%. And you continue doing this for 10 sets and trying to maintain the intensity that is prescribed. Now this type of training allows you to perform more volume of workout and to perform higher intensity of workout. In compared to Fartlek, here you cannot change the intensity or you cannot change the workout duration, the work interval duration. So for you to perform Short-HIIT, you should be aware about your current aerobic capacity level. You should be aware about your current resting heart rate so that you can calculate 80% and 90% of HRR and try to maintain the speed for 15 seconds in this case. In case your aerobic capacity is low or you do not have an experience of doing interval training and you try to perform a Short-HIIT, you may find that you are able to sustain 15 seconds, but the intensity is something that you are not able to sustain. In this case, you may not cover 10 minutes or 10 sets with the desired intensity that is being prescribed. So in that case, you have to reduce the intensity of the work interval and the intensity of the rest interval. So deciding what should be the duration of the work interval and what should be the intensity of the work interval would depend upon your training status and your current fitness level. Let's move to the next type of HIIT, Long-HIIT. Again, here long term refers to duration, and this is defined as 60 seconds to 300 seconds, that is 1 minute to 5 minutes of duration. So in Long-HIIT, the work interval and the rest interval can be prescribed in between 1 minute to 5 minutes. Let's understand Long-HIIT with example. Here you prescribe Long-HIIT as a method of training. You prescribed it for 15 minutes. Now, how is this 15 minutes divided? What are the intervals? 3 minutes of work interval and 2 minutes of rest interval. So here you are doing the aerobic activity at much more higher intensity, but for 3 minutes, followed by 2 minutes of recovery time with a lower intensity. So one set is equal to 5 minutes. That comes because the work interval is of 3 minutes and the rest interval is of 2 minutes. So total about 5 minutes non-stop. So you prescribe 15 minutes. So total of you have to perform 3 sets of work interval of 3 minutes and rest interval of 2 minutes. This type of training allows you to sustain the higher intensity for a little longer duration of time. So this type of method is useful for an individual who is able to sustain their aerobic activity and who wants to increase the tolerance of performing an aerobic activity for longer duration of time, but at a higher intensity. So in compared to short HIIT, long HIIT is much more challenging because you try to maintain a higher heart rate for a longer duration of time. And that's the stimulation that you give to improve your aerobic capacity. How would your weekly interval training workout looks like? So on Monday, you choose interval training Fartlek method of training. You perform it on treadmill. Then on Wednesday, you choose short HIIT method of interval training, and on Friday, you prescribe a long HIIT of training. So by knowing different methods of interval training, you can perform different variations of workout within a week and give a variety to your workout, thereby avoiding the boredom as well as giving steady stimulation and allowing your systems to progress to sustain higher intensity of aerobic activity for a longer duration of time. So you should be progressing from continuous training to interval training, and at interval training you should start with Fartlek, where you decide the work interval by yourself, the rest interval by yourself. Once you have enough experience of training with Fartlek, you jump to the more difficult version of interval training, where the work interval is fixed and the rest intervals are fixed. So in summary, an interval method of aerobic training requires you to perform aerobic activity with work interval and rest interval. There are two subtypes of interval training: the Fartlek interval training and high intensity interval training. One can do more work in less time by choosing interval training method of aerobic training. Choose type of interval training based on your current cardio fitness level and your aerobic training experience. Thank you.